On Monday and Tuesday, His Holiness Tinley Tie Dorje, head of the Karma Kagyu tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, I hope I've got that right, and the head of over 600 monasteries and meditation centres worldwide, will visit Manchester as part of his European tour, giving talks at Manchester Central. Joining Nina and I now is Lampa Jampatai, who's the spiritual director of the Dechen community, is that correct?
Dechen.
Dechen, forgive me. To tell us what it's all about. Welcome to Channel M today. Quite a big event then for your group.
Very big. I think this is probably the biggest Buddhist event in Manchester that's actually taken place since the previous incarnation of this Lama came 30-odd years ago. When we just started our Buddhist centre, I invited him. So it's wonderful that his successor is coming now.
Tell us what makes him so significant to Buddhists.
Well, among Tibetan Buddhists, he's really one of the major Lamas, you know, ranking alongside His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His series of incarnations have been amazingly important, not just in Tibet, but in Bhutan, Mongolia, China, northern India. So he's one of the major figures in world Buddhism.
Buddhism, for those who are unfamiliar with it, is not a religion, I understand, is it? Tell us, in layman's terms, the practice that you follow and what you believe.
I think Buddhism is not a religion because we don't believe in a creator God. So we think that actually understanding the mind, understanding how we work, is the key to finding happiness in life, the key to freedom from suffering. So probably you'd say Buddhism is a cross between a philosophy and a psychology. It's not an armchair philosophy. We need to do something. We need to practice. We need to develop qualities, love and compassion and wisdom. So it's not just a set of opinions. It's a way of transforming yourself.
And how do you practice? I mean, you know, Christians go to church and people go to mosques and synagogues. What do Buddhists do? What do
Buddhists do? First of all, they begin by developing a moral way of life based on concern for others. Then they may study the Buddhist teachings. They may go to temples and listen to teachings from qualified masters. And if they're very serious, they'll start to meditate. They'll start the practice of kind of inward psychological transformation.
Is it mutually exclusive with other religions? You say Buddhists don't necessarily have a God that Christians or Jews or perhaps Muslims would recognise. Does that mean you could be both? No, you can't really be both. I mean, with all due respect to those religions, and there's a lot of good in most of the world religions, Buddhism is different exactly because we're non-theistic. For us, salvation from suffering is in your hands, is in the individual human being's hands. It doesn't depend on an external God. I mean, I respect the other religions, but no, we're different.
And how widespread is Buddhism in Greater Manchester, the UK, continental Europe?
I don't know what the figures are for Manchester, but when I started, there was a handful. In fact, there were only about 4 or 5 Buddhist centres in the whole of Britain. That was the beginning of the 70s. And the number of Buddhists in Manchester was just a few of us old hippies. But since then, it's become huge. Probably in Britain, there's about 250,000 practicing Buddhists, I think, now. And in Manchester, there are many centres of different kinds.
So you're expecting a big turnout then?
Oh, yeah, we certainly are, yeah. And we're very pleased that people, not just from our own tradition, but from other Buddhist traditions, and the general public, the people who just have an interest in spiritual things will come.
You talk about tradition, so within Buddhism there are then sort of subdivisions?
Oh, yeah, there are plenty. I mean, because Buddhism spread all over Asia before it even came to the West, so there are plenty. But there's not that antagonism that you sometimes find between different religious sects. We need different forms of Buddhism to meet the different needs that people have. The different approaches that people need are kind of reflected in the different schools of Buddhism. So it's a happy situation generally.
And what would your advice to people be if they wanted to learn more about the visit or more about Buddhism in general?
Well, you can check on our website. I'm not a keen internet man, but I guess it's called dechen.org. You can check on there and just come along on Monday evening if you want.
Okay, thank you very much. It's lovely to meet you. It's been very interesting.
That's great. That's great.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.